My third pedagogical creed. I believe that educators can restore faith in humanity as a whole, because they are individuals who are immersed in acts of love every single day, and they are the most equipped to act as the conscience of society. Without love, one cannot teach. Let me quote the Bible, since I'm an Arab Christian, a passage that I actually love. I read from the first epistle of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Though I speak with the tongues of men and angels, but have no love, I have become a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all the mysteries and all the knowledge, and though I have all the faith so that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I have nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fades, but whether there are prophecies, they will fade. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. Besides Mark Johnson, Carol Gilligan, Maxine Greene, and Fridtjof Capra, important educators who deeply touched me in my educational journey have been Joseph Campbell, Leo Buscaglia, and Sam Keen. The late Buscaglia, professor at large at the University of Southern California, wrote a book on love, which he published in '72. I'm sure many of you are aware of his work and his non-credit course, Love A1, and his lectures on PBS, as well as his best-selling books. He may have been mocked by the cynics, but he was hailed by the students as a hero. Love is not an ethereal emotion that is sketched out of the imagination of romantics. Love is real, it's hard work, it's getting our hands dirty, it's sweat and blood on a daily basis. It is all-powerful and enduring. Some of my friends say that I'm figuratively manic when it comes to swaying from one extreme to the other. The pits of depression at times when one feels despondent because one is working against all odds, against systems that are rapacious and voracious, to the heights of euphoria when a student does well after failing, or when a student who never talks begins to speak in class, or perhaps when a student who started out as a religious fanatic, I've had that experience with my students, begins to see the value and importance of the scientific method and garners insight about what the late Stephen Jay Gould called the non-overlapping magisteria of science and religion, in his wonderful book, Rocks of Ages, Science and Religion in the Fullness of Life, which he published in '99. As teachers, we have all experienced the importance of spontaneity in our lives, in our classrooms. Sometimes our students teach us that, sometimes we remind them of its value. Leo Buscaglia said, I cry all the time. I cry when I'm happy, I cry when I'm sad. I cry when a student says something beautiful. I cry when I read poetry. Buscaglia talked about death as our ally, our hope in self-creation, our strength in connectiveness, our uniqueness in purpose, our rapture in intimacy and love, and also in love, our source for overcoming our doubts, frustrations, and pain. In the living universe today, even scientists are not impartial observers. The scientist is a participator whose observation or attempt to determine initial conditions has an irreducible effect on the rest of the universe. A pluralistic approach is being suggested in science and in multicultural education. In the classical waltz, there is a tension between the closed hole and what I call the flying bolt, when it is perfected and it's beautiful. I want to quote Ma'luf again on what he believes are the fundamental rights of human beings. That is what unites them, what is the basis of their commonality. Everything that has to do with human rights, he says. The right to live as a full citizen on the soil of one's fathers, free of persecution and discrimination. The right to live with dignity anywhere. The right to choose one's life and love and beliefs freely, while respecting the freedom of others. The right of free access to knowledge, health, and a decent, honorable life. None of this may be denied to our fellow human beings. on the pretext of preserving a belief, an ancestral practice, or a tradition. In this area, we should tend towards universality, and even if necessary, towards uniformity, because humanity, while it is also multiple, is primarily one. End of quote. Let us abandon academia for a moment and go to the streets of Syria. Thousands of people are giving their lives in order to achieve freedom, to create a democratic society in their country. We see it on television. It's harrowing, really harrowing. Thousands upon thousands have died so far in the last year. They have died in order to have the right to speak, the right to change their governments, the right to choose a government that will protect their human, civil, and legal rights, in order to live life to the fullest with dignity and integrity. But the more important question here is, who is going to be the guardian of this heritage of sacrifice and selflessness? Who will interpret those noble actions? Who is going to translate those lost lives into won freedoms and entrenched values, transformed governments and new programs, schools, universities, research centers, books, town hall debates, commentaries in newspapers, publications, and a new reading of history that will be officially adopted in elementary schools of the country? That is the challenge that all of us are facing in all of the countries of the Arab Spring in the Arab world. In these sensitive and difficult times when human lives are being overwhelmed by and ridden with natural, spiritual, emotional, political, social, and environmental disasters, allow me to say that the only light I see at the end of this tunnel is the one emanating from teachers. And although we have moved so far away from what would be considered today a utopia 100 years ago, when Stephen Dedalus could say that an intellectual's duty was not to serve any power or authority at all, perhaps we need to agree with Said that instead of denying the impingements of professionalism and their influence on academics, we need to search for a different set of values and prerogatives, fueled by care and affection rather than by profit and selfish narrow specialization. I agree with Said when he asks, how does the intellectual address authority? As a professional supplicant or as its unrewarded amateurish conscience? And I can tell you today that in the Arab world there are thousands upon thousands of intellectuals who are in prison and who continue to be in prison because they have decided not to address authority as a professional supplicant. So my fourth pedagogic creed, okay? I believe that the experience of educators informs them that, in Charles Taylor's words, self-fulfillment does not exclude unconditional relationships and moral demands. On the contrary, it requires them. That is what enables them to create in their work a culture of authenticity that can help society deal with the malaise of modernity, which has not been addressed but rather complicated by postmodernity. The three malaises, as Taylor saw them, were individualism, the loss of the heroic dimension of life, and the primacy of instrumental reason. I believe that the work of Charles Taylor explains the changes that have led to the confusion and chaos of the present century at its outset. In Sources of the Self, The Making of Modern Identity, published in 1989, Taylor traces the development of individual identity that had been, until modernity, submerged in societal frameworks and interpretations. As the crucial and dramatic changes ensued in the span of 100 years, namely mid-19th until mid-20th century, uncertainty, confusion, conflict, and fear prevailed. I'm quoting Taylor now. They, the people, lack a frame of reference or horizon within which things can take on a stable significance, within which some life possibilities can be seen as good or meaningful, others as bad or trivial. The meaning of all these possibilities is unfixed, labeled, or undetermined. This is a painful and frightening experience, end of quote.